Welcome to the Online SuperCoach podcast. Today, we have a very special guest I'm kind of excited for. He's best known for his trademark 10-80-10 principle. He's a motivational speaker and an author of several books, including one by the same name. Sunjay Nath is here with us, and he is committed to helping transform individuals, businesses, and corporate organizations for optimum yield and productivity. So I thought he'd be a great guest to have on for us today. So Sunjay, welcome.
Thank you, Dennison. And thanks for not building me up too much, because that way I won't disappoint.
Yeah, right. So Sunjay, quick question before we begin. I always like to start off with a phrase or a mantra, something that really inspires you, that you like, a phrase that speaks to you exactly. So if there's one out there, let's hear it.
Okay, I'm going to give you a long-winded answer, but it's going to be 2 words.
Sure.
And the 2 words are be wealthy. Now, I want to give a little background of that. I was tasked with finding a mission statement. I don't know if it was a high school, university, or it was years and years ago. And I wanted to make it really simple. And that's what I ended up coming up with, was be wealthy. And be wealthy to me means something that means it means different things to me than it means to other people. A lot of people hear finance and money on that. But what I actually did is I have a 2-page document that broke down what wealth is in 9 different areas of my life. And it was about energy and enthusiasm and relationships and charisma and finances. And like, there was all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so then what I realized, it's probably around 19 or 20 years old, that one of the things about having mantras is it's nice to have them, but it's more important when you actually say them, hear them, believe them.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, how can I do that? And what I ended up doing is coming up with an exercise that attached my mantra to my breath. So every time I breathe, I took an inhale or an exhale, I would actually repeat the mantra. And the idea being that when I wasn't consciously doing it, I would subconsciously start to do it. So I'll actually, to this day, use this if I'm trying to fall asleep, or if I'm trying to relax. I'll make the conscious effort to kind of inhale, be wealthy, exhale, be wealthy. And it's just how I do it. And then during the day, when I'm actually doing stuff and I'm not necessarily thinking about the mantra, I'm hoping that the breathing attaches subconsciously.
Yeah. So that is like really interesting for me, because I could relate. I could actually relate to that. And it just reminded me of something that I forgot about that I no longer do. So a long time ago, like for years and years and years, I used to keep on my, like, whatever I had, the iPod or whatever I had, the calendar on my phone at the time. And I would have as a daily reminder at the top, be George Bailey. Be George Bailey. And it was similarly for the same reason. So George Bailey is this fictional character from It's a Wonderful Life. And he was just like embodied like such a great guy who was always like great to everybody else, and worked out from the long run from always just giving and giving and giving, basically. So I just thought that was just like if you just remind yourself daily to be that type of person in your community, it's like, what a great, like that's really the way to live a life, basically. So I don't have it there anymore, and I completely forgot about it. But you literally reminded me, because by you wanting to say it like in between your breaths and have a constant reminder of yourself, to me, it reminded me of that.
Awesome. And to that, if I can sort of piggyback on your thought,
yeah.
When you want to emulate the behaviors of another human being, I think that's a great way to look at it. But what I think that sometimes people go down the rabbit hole of trying to be someone else. So it's nice to go, socially, I want to be like this person, and physically, I want to be like this person, financially, I want to be like this person, and relationship, and I think that those are great things to achieve or to strive for. I don't know if it's necessarily achievable, but It's nice to kind of go, hey, who's the best in this one particular field? And then the great example is professional sports. Right. There are a lot of really good athletes that are total jackasses. So you want them on your team as a teammate for the sport, but you don't want them as a drinking buddy.
Right.
And I think that sometimes people think you have to, if you're trying to emulate someone, you have to be them. And no, you don't want to be them, because that's already been done. You wanted to learn the best from them and add to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, he's a fictional character, so yeah.
There you go.
So that's really, really good stuff. So we're off to a great start here. So real quick, if you would like to maybe inform our audience a little bit tell us a little bit about your like career chronology, a little bit of your resume of how you got you started in all of everything that you're doing.
Sure. I have a degree in mathematical engineering. And everyone knows that engineers are social, emotional creatures, and they should all become professional speakers. So that's how I got up on that. And then I went and got an MBA, which was a total ripoff because it said MBA, and I thought it said NBA. I thought I was going to play basketball.
Yeah.
So that's my education. When I was in high school, I was very involved with student leadership. And when I graduated school, I was off to university. My old high school called me and said, come back, give people a pep talk about getting involved. We'll pay you to speak.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is really cool, because normally people paid me to shut up. So I ended up going back and doing that presentation. And then that led to another presentation, speaking at another school, which led to another presentation. And 28 years later, I'm still doing it. But I don't do schools as much anymore. I work a lot more with organizations and individuals and corporations and associations and that sort of thing. And I found this sort of niche around the performance and leadership piece, because I recognized many, many moons ago that the smartest kid didn't always get the top marks on the test. And the most qualified individual didn't always get the job or the scholarship. And the most talented team doesn't always win the championship. So there was this other unknown piece. And that to me is what leadership is. It's that idea of belief and communication and trust and empathy and all these other soft skills that often give us the edge. So you can win, and I put win in quotes because it's based on your definition, but you can win without necessarily being the best. And that's sort of launched my, I don't know, my obsession, but my desire for learning about these kinds of things. And so as a speaker, and that's primarily what I do, is I go and I do some coaching, but mostly going into organizations and kind of saying, hey, are you using your resources the best way you can to achieve what you want to achieve?
Right.
And that's the core of what I do now.
Right. So just staying on top of that, what triggered the school, like where you got your start, like to even invite you in the first place? Like what were you doing at that point that made them think of you?
So as I mentioned, my old high school called me up. I'll go a little deeper into the story. My old high school called me up, said, come and can speak. And because when I graduated, I was like student council president and valedictorian, and I played sports and, high marks and all that. I was that kid, that annoying kid.
Valedictorian, wow, that's great.
So when they called me and said, come give us the benefits of getting involved, I was all excited. And the people I was living with at school, there's one girl, she said, well, what are you so excited about? I'm like, well, they want me to speak and do this. And
yeah.
So that's really cool. She goes, I coach a swim team. Why don't you come and talk to the swim team? And I'm like, okay. So she connects me with the head coach of the swim team. It was a competitive team.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, the coach is like, this is great. We're going to get you in weekly. So I'm waking up 6:30 on Saturday morning.
Yeah, they got in there for the practice.
to talk to 8 to 10-year-olds about dealing with your parents and setting your goals. And then older kids started sitting in on the sessions. And at one point, parents started sitting in on the sessions. And this one guy said, I run this youth center. Will you come and speak at the youth center? And I went and spoke there. And then someone in that youth center was a teacher. And she said, how much do you charge to speak at schools? And I went, you can charge to speak at schools?
Right.
And my business was launched on at that time. So and again, snowballed, one thing led to another. The phone still rings.
That's amazing. That's such a cool story of how it just evolved out of just that. It's something you clearly enjoy. You can just feel the enthusiasm, which is really, really great. So I'm super interested in hearing straight from you the 10-80-10. So why don't you tell us what that is and how it came about, like how you made it.
Sure. So the 10-80-10 is a concept. It's kind of my flagship bread and butter core presentation. And where does it come from? Well, as I mentioned, I'm a leadership junkie. And I found that whenever I read something, whenever I watched something or researched something or learned something, I found that certain themes kept on coming up time and time again. And I literally, actually on my wall right here, I have a list of these 10 concepts that I think that basically every leadership book, podcast, video, presentation has one of these themes. And what happened is, and they've been around for like 2,000 years. There's nothing new. There's like things like communication and trust and believing in yourself. So there's nothing fancy there. But what happens is every couple of years, or someone puts a new spin on it. Maybe they have a different language. Maybe they have a great example, but it's really comes down to these core ideas. And
Right.
so when I kept on finding that it came up time and time again, I was like, how do I mush them together to kind of create I don't want to say universal, but a multi-inclusive idea of a lot of these concepts. So if someone wanted the crash course, wanted the Coles notes, and they just wanted
Right.
a bite size, like, oh yeah, this is really helpful. How do we do that? And that's kind of what it came from. And literally, I've read hundreds of different things, and I put them together, mushed them together in this concept I call the 10-80-10 principle, which, if I could say it in like 2 seconds or less, is about focusing on your strengths. So let me explain to you how it would play out. See, you can take any group of people and you can subdivide them into 3 groups: top 10%, bottom 10%, and majority 80%.
Okay.
Top 10, bottom 10, majority 80. Okay. Top 10 wants to be there. Bottom 10 has to be there. Majority 80 follows whichever group is more empowered. So whichever group has more social influence and accolades will shift up the majority 80 or shift them down. So let me give you a context where you've probably seen this.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to a live theater presentation, stand-up comedy, a musical, any of that kind of thing, and if you've ever ended up giving a standing ovation to a show that you really didn't think deserved a standing ovation, this is the 10-80-10 principle at work. Let me explain why. You're sitting there watching the show, and chances are you're what we call majority 80. You go with the flow. But if you happen to be sitting next to the mother of the lead role, she would be a top 10. So even if the show is okay, she's proud of her baby. You know, curtain call comes, she's on her feet, hooting and hollering, slapping, clapping her, throwing roses. Oh, that's my baby. Oh, that's my child.
Right.
She's losing her mind, right? And out of social convention and out of politeness, she stands up, she's hooting and hollering. You're like, fine, I'll stand up too. You start clapping as well.
Yeah, being
So
polite.
here's an example. The top 10 was empowered. The majority 80 follows.
Right.
Flip side, you've ever been into a presentation that's really, really bad. That it's like the speaker is boring, the topic is horrible. You want to rip out your ears, right? And you look around the room and everyone else is on their phone or they're involved in side conversations. So what do? You kind of lean back, you pull out your phone and you start fiddling away, right? And so there's an example of the bottom 10 got empowered and the majority kind of gets pulled down to those common denominator. And so the $1 million question becomes this: if you're in a position where you're trying to influence people, where you're trying to get people to, I don't know, listen to your podcast more, I don't know, sign up for your training services, make more sales, who does it make most sense to target? The top 10, the bottom 10, or the majority 80? And without going into a whole keynote here, I'll save you we'll jump to the punchline. And the punchline says, you're always going to get your best result by focusing on the top 10.
Right, of course.
So if you have a client, say I run a training business, and I have a client who wants to get into better shape, and they are a top 10. What does that mean they're a top 10? It means they're eager and they're keen, and they may be in great shape. Versus someone who is overweight, who has poor eating habits, who actually really needs a service, but no desire. So let me explain what happens. You have a top 10 who has a desire, who may be in good shape, and a bottom 10 who needs it more, but they're actually bottom 10 because there's no desire.
Right.
If you focus your time on your bottom 10, what are you going to get? You're going to get someone who's going to cut corners.
Yeah.
They're going to have zero success. They're going to go to their buddies at the bar, eating their poutine, drinking beer, going, oh, I've been seeing this trainer. I've got no results. Trainer sucks. It doesn't work. So it's what I call the triple whammy. Whammy number one, they don't get the success. Their behaviors don't change. Whammy number two, you get frustrated. You're spending all this time, all this love, all this energy, all these mental calories trying to help them. They don't want to be helped. You get demotivated. That's whammy number two. Whammy number three, here's the big one. The people around that person feel ignored. And instead of making a difference and creating value, you've actually ignored all these people. So let's look at the flip side. Even though this person may be in good shape, even great shape, you working with them in their desire, they're going to get in better shape. They're going to go from a 4-pack to a 6-pack, a 6-pack to an 8-pack. And they're going to go and flex and be at the gym. And they're going to go, my buddy, my coach, my dentist, man, he's the man.
Right.
And so what's going to happen is by empowering the top 10, by focusing on them, they get empowered. The majority 80, remember, follows whichever group is more powerful.
Right.
They're going to shift up. And then eventually, this is where the magic in 10-80-10 happens, is the bottom 10 breaks apart and does one of two things. Either they run after the group going, wait for me, I want to do that as well.
Right.
Or they run away and go, this isn't what I signed up for, I'm out of here. And they leave.
Right.
So bottom line, and here's the other benefit too, is when you're dealing with your top 10, how do you feel? When you're dealing with your top 10 clients, your top 10 vendors, your top
so
10
rewarding. It's super rewarding. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is basically what the concept is for any group, you always want to focus on the people who are already showing you the results. By empowering them, you create an army that will follow. Then the bottom 10, either through natural attrition will leave, or through group dynamics and peer pressure will follow.
That's so interesting. That's super interesting. And I really, I'm a little bit, before at one point in my life, I was a history major and I was really into history. I was a history teacher and I was an Eagle Scout, and I'm very much into leadership. And I've studied, I've read up on leadership as well, but I really pride myself on really have a good understanding of leadership principles. And just now I'm curious, as you're a self-proclaimed leadership junkie, like, and this is just me almost geeking out, like, but who do you like look to or historically? Like, is there anyone that you like have read about that you feel are really great examples of leaders? Or are there some people who you think that, I was just curious in that subject of like who you look to in that regard.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stay on topic with 10-80-10 specifically and answer that by going, what are some of the major influencers for this? And,
Right.
and I'm a believer too that leadership, you can have really, really good, strong leadership qualities and use them for evil. And there are great historical examples of that. And I'm not going to pick names because I find that when I pick a name, people can get offended just by the name. But regardless, and I'm not trying to, be political.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not you hate or love the person, they are good leaders.
Right.
Right. And it's like fire. Fire can be used for good or evil. You can cook, your dinner, or you can burn a house.
Absolutely.
It's not the force, it's what you're doing with it. But
Right.
I'll give you a few examples of some of these leadership principles that come from people who may be regarded as gurus or not. But there's something called Pareto principle, which probably most of your podcast listeners would know, but likely by a different name. So Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. What's the 80-20 rule? It says 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts.
Yeah.
Where does it come from? An Italian economist named Vilfred Pareto noticed that in Italy, 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. Okay. He traveled throughout Europe and he found this ratio almost always be true. 80% of the land owned by 20% of the people. So he created Pareto principle, and they applied it to everything. They say in business, 80% of your profits come from 20% of your clients, right?
Wow.
In customer service, they say 80% of your headaches come from 20% of your clients.
That's interesting.
Socially, if you walk in your closet, they say you wear 80% of your clothes 20% of the time, which means you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time.
Wow.
You go home out of work, you get out of the monkey suit and you put on the comfy jeans. So
Right.
the point of Pareto principle is there's a skewed ratio. One input doesn't always give you one output. One of the proper inputs gets you more bang for your buck. One of the improper inputs is going to get you less. So there's an example. Another one that, which comes into 10-80-10, saying if you focus on the top 10.
Yeah, I see it.
Right. There's another one for me, like, again, you wouldn't think of them as a leadership guru, but really influential. If you remember Sir Isaac Newton and his laws of motion.
Yeah.
And he had 3 of them. And the first one said something to the effect of, a body in motion tends to stay in motion.
Yeah.
Body at rest tends to stay at rest. And what he said in a non-scientific way, he said, action follows action and inaction follows inaction. Right?
That's
a body in motion tends to stay in motion. Action follows action. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. Inaction follows inaction. And as a trainer, you know this, the hardest workout to do is the first one, because you have to go from inaction to inaction to action. So the people who work out every day and have done it for 56 days in a row, on the 57th day, if they do not work out, how do they feel?
Yeah, like crap. Yeah.
Right? They feel like they're missing something, because that's the new pattern. That's the momentum. Action
Yeah.
follows action. Right? So I mean, I constantly look at things like that, and I'm like, oh, there's a leadership principle there. Oh,
That's
in
great.
fact, I used to, when I did my undergrad, I had a buddy that was kind of a bit of a junkie for this as well, and we used to play this game. If we were ever in a road trip, we would give each other two unseemingly related topics, and it was like an impromptu exercise where we'd have to talk about the two things and merge them together with leadership message.
That's amazing. That's so cool. That's so cool how you try to make those types of analogies. That's really, really cool.
So yeah,
I think that's pretty clever. But even in talking in leadership, and obviously leadership is important for anybody who's running an organization or running their own business or anything of that matter. Is this something that's actually born with? You always hear that phrase that, leadership, he's a born leader type of thing. Is that something you could actually learn and cultivate and improve and get better at, like as a skill? Or is that something that you either have it,
oh, I would say I'm definitely, this is a whole nature versus nurture argument, right?
Yeah.
Are you born with it, or can you develop it? And I'm going to go to the sports world again. There are different types of athletes. There are people who are gifted athletes who are just, if they're a gymnast, they have pointed toes. If they're a basketball player, they're really tall. If they're a bodybuilder, they just attract muscle. They smell it and it just grows on them. And so there was a certain aptitude, natural ability that comes. However, regardless of where you start, you can always enhance your ability. So if you made a matrix, you can have the people that have no hard work and ethics and no raw talent. That's one category. Then you have the people who have no talent but work hard. People have all the talent and don't work hard, and the people who work really hard and have lots of talent. So I believe you can always move the needle. Obviously, you're going to get the best results from the people who are working hard and have the talent. Those are your Michael Jordans, your Wayne Gretzky's, those
Elon
types
Musk,
of things. But there are people who have very little talent, who bust their ass, who work hard and make it to the top league. They may not make the Hall of Fame, and that's fine. And to me, it's the same thing with leadership. Yeah. The difference, though, is leadership has less of a physical component to it. It's more cerebral. And so I think you can learn to do that more so than you can learn to be 7 feet tall to be able to slam a basketball, to dunk a basketball.
Right. That's interesting. I totally agree. It's a skill that you could learn, but it's similar to like basketball. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And staying with like some of the 10-80-10 stuff that you've mentioned about like just finding your strengths. I just wanted to elaborate more on that as far as do you think like finding your voice and figuring out like what your strengths are is something that trainers could maybe use as far as developing their own content? And I just wanted to talk a little bit more on that subject, basically.
Absolutely. So in business, if you look at business philosophies and in terms of creating a brand, right, there's a difference between a specialist and a generalist. And if you look from a business perspective, strictly financially, specialists always make more money than generalists, right? Your GP makes good money, but your brain surgeon makes more.
Right.
Right. And if you look at it, even again, I keep going to sports, but the player who's kind of good at everything versus the one guy or girl who's just like is laser focused at being the sniper in basketball, or the closer in baseball, or the punt returner in football. When you are a specialist, you're going to do better. And what does it mean in business to be a specialist? It means creating a brand. What's a brand? Brand is something that you're known by, that people, when they want it, they go to you. And so I look at, in the world of business, when someone wants to blow their nose, do they ask for a facial tissue or do they ask for a Kleenex? And people ask for a Kleenex, even though that is the brand name. I'm showing my age here, but back in the day, rollerblades. Rollerblades are a brand of inline skates. And so what some of these people were able to do is narrow their focus so much that if people wanted to get access to that category, they simply asked for it by name. I mean, Coke did this for years, right? You didn't say I want a cola, you said I want a Coke. And so I think the exact same principle applies for trainers. Yeah, 100%. You want to be known as the blah. What is it? You don't want to be known as I will fix everyone and do everything, because it's not as helpful. But what about if you said, here's my niche. I'm going to focus on business leaders who want to work out at lunch.
Right.
Right. And you create your brand around that, and that becomes your strength. And so what do you do? That I don't know, you end up putting together a program that, okay, it's the 37-minute program, because I figured they have 37 minutes to work out, and then they need 13 minutes to shower, 10 minutes to get back to work. Boom, the thing's done in an hour. Right. And again, it doesn't have to be, we will build this muscle. It can be based on physical attributes of what you're doing with the workout, but it can also be on social or psychological attributes. We're targeting single moms. We are targeting moms who have given birth in the last 6 months. But any of those things kind of go, you know, I want to be a specialist. I'm going to create that brand. And here's my top 10. My top 10 is, you become a student of that, is I know this world better than anyone else. And if you are a single mom who just gave birth, and boom, we are the program for you. And there's not 100 other people doing that. So that actually increases your business. So yeah, how do you apply 10-8-10 for that? Is you kind of go inward and go, in fact, I use a Venn diagram, 3 circles. I call one of them, I call market, one I call aptitude, and one I call passion. Market, aptitude, and passion. Aptitude is your skill set. What are you good at? What can you do better than the next guy or girl? Right? And it might be communication, and it might be knowing anatomy, and it might be you're a great leader by example, because you were 400 pounds and you've turned it around, whatever. But that's your skill set. That's your aptitude. The next piece is the market. Are there people who want those services? Because it's possible to be too niche, and you only require people who are left-handed, born in Missouri, who you know, are the youngest of 7 children.
Yeah. And
so you may have a great product and be brilliant, but if there's only 3 people in your market, and of which, you know, one of them is your ex-wife, chances are you're not going to sustain that as a business.
Yeah.
Right. And then the third piece is the passion. How excited are you about it? Because if you are not excited, I promise you, you will burn out. It might be 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. I don't know. But if you're doing it because you think you're supposed to, because your mom encouraged you to do it, because there's a lot of money being made for it, if those are your core reasons for doing it, you will burn out.
Yeah.
So what you want to find out, the bling bling spot, is where the 3 of them intersect. And by the way, if you only have to focus on 2 of them, the 2 that you want to focus on are the passion piece and the market. Because with the passion piece, you can learn to be better.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the other one too. With the passion piece and the aptitude, you can actually create a market too.
Right.
Right. So it starts from the passion. You want to have all 3, because that's the lowest hanging fruit. But if you had to focus on 2, you kind of go passion and market, or passion.
You could develop the aptitude even you get better at it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that is so interesting. I am not sure, as you were talking that entire time, I wasn't sure if you watched a lot of our podcasts or went through our course or anything, because we talk so much about exactly that with the niche. We actually use that example all the time of being a generalist versus a specialist, and how you want to really become the specialist and have people identify you as being the guru for that particular type of thing. That's a major tenet of what we discuss here at Online SuperCoach. So that is really, really amazing of you coming from that direction of from your own experiences and saying basically the same thing. And then furthermore, one of my follow-up questions, which you already answered, was, you know, how does somebody go about, I was going to ask if you have any strategies to how you go about really identifying what your strengths are if you're not really sure, or, you know, which direction you want to go. And I love this pie chart. So market, aptitude, and passion. I feel like that's a great tool to use for anybody really in anything.
If I can add one more to that, it's a question I'm often asked. People will say, well,
Yeah.
I don't know what my top 10 are. How do I find my top 10?
Yeah.
And again, this is a longer question, but just to give you a nugget of an answer, your pet peeves, which sounds weird, make a list of your pet peeves, because the reason you have pet peeves is you have a skill set that you think everyone else has, but they don't. So again, if you've ever been, I don't know, at the subway with your buddy and he or she goes, oh, look, there's a typo on that poster.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Or you go to a party and your friend's like, why did they put the nachos here? If they put them over there, it would, it's impeding the flow of conversation. This is ridiculous. And you're just going, I wanted some nachos. The reason it bugs them is because they already think that way and they assume everyone else does.
Right.
So when you realize those things that bug you, it is a reminder that you have a skill set there and you could potentially help others to do that.
And you'll relate better to even if you might relate better to people who are also like-minded and go and build it around that brand too. That's a whole another thing we talk about. It's like, who do you like training? Who do you most comfortable with is how we're doing it. But that pet peeve way is a really psychological roundabout way to kind of get there. And it's still it's getting there the same way, because if you're, working with clientele that you really relate well with, and you just have the same culture, same values, same ideals, you just really, really mesh well with, that's going to be a real good recipe for having longstanding, business, of your customer base. So I think that is a great idea too. That I'm glad you added that. So top 10 pet peeves. That's kind of hard to think about. I never thought of it that way. I was like, oh, I can't think of any of mine. But then you just mentioned like the nacho one. I could see me being kind of very like particular about like with the in the restaurant, culture. So that's interesting. A very interesting thing. So I have like one other question. In my life, like I get the opportunity to, meet trainers and fitness professionals every single day from all over the world, really. And I get so much of the same kind of conversation so often that the trainers are super busy. They're working, early in the morning, getting, before people go to work, late at night before they go to work, and they're just so exhausted, so tired, and they just can't get off that hamster wheel. They just can't can't find a change to what they're doing. And that's why I guess sometimes they're interested in learning more about what other ways they are to kind of use their professionalism in like online coaching space or something else. But there's a lot of times they just can't pull the trigger. A lot of times they just can't pull the trigger and get off that hamster wheel that they're on, because they just can't do it, and I feel so bad, because it's like really, I've done that before, and it's a long day, and it's not unforgiving. So I was wondering if you have any advice for trainers who are in that hamster wheel, and how they could maybe invest in themselves or just how they could get out of that rut that they're in.
Sure. So I was doing my 10-80-10 program one time, and someone challenged me. Guy puts up his hand and he says, so this whole 10-80-10 stuff, it's like about focusing on your strengths. And I said, absolutely. It's a huge, huge part of it.
Yeah.
And he goes, so you're telling me if I'm coaching a bunch of 4-year-olds and teaching them to play soccer, I should only play my best players because they're my top 10. And I said, hold on a second, because I was explaining this concept. And again, I'm giving you the very 30,000 foot view. There's more nuances to it. But I talk about, you have to start from what I called your desired result. Your desired result is, what is the goal, the mission, the vision, the outcome? Because when you start from there, your top 10 and your bottom 10 can swap very quickly, right? So if I give a bit of a silly example,
how could that happen? Actually, I don't even understand.
Okay, so let's pretend we go to the leprechaun convention, and we ask the leprechaun to line up according to height. All right, who's the top 10 in that group, the tallest or the shortest? And the answer is, it depends what you're looking for. Because if you're looking for people who can reach things off the countertop, then chances are your top 10 will be your tallest. But if within the leprechaun community, shorter is better stature, or you're looking for people who can walk under the chairs without bumping their heads, all of a sudden your top 10 are your shortest. But they haven't changed anything about who they are. It's not an assessment that they're good people, bad people. My criteria changed. So the top 10 and bottom 10 can swap very quickly, right? So I need to be clear on what my desired result is. Because if I say, I need the top 10, but I haven't given any context to that, it gets really confusing. So going back to this guy who's going, I played my best players, I go, hold on a second. Because when you're coaching 4-year-old soccer, the desired result is not winning. But if it was to win, yeah, you play your best players. You have the Super Bowl, you don't play your bench players, you play your best players. But I'm going to make the argument, when you're coaching 4-year-old soccer, it's about teamwork, sportsmanship, communication, working hard. So that's why the kid who tries the hardest, the kid who shows up and has the best attendance, gets to play the most. Because they are espousing the top 10 behaviors that I'm trying to teach other people. So we empower that. So I'm going to go back to specifically now to your question. Those people that are feeling they're on the hamster wheel, it's because they haven't articulated what they wanted. They don't know what the desired result is.
They don't know what the desired result
They're going, they've lined up. The tallest is the top. No, the shortest, I have no idea. So the question is, what do you want? Well, I want a lifestyle that allows me to do this full time. Or I don't want to do this full time because I don't feel the security in it. I still need my full-time gig. Or something in between. Because when you are able to articulate the desired result, what is the top 10, what is the bottom 10 will seem much more obvious. I've literally worked with organizations where I've sat around the C-suite table. So these are the big wigs and some of these large organizations. And if I go to around the table and go, what is the purpose, the desired result of the organization? And I'll hear this. The first guy will say, oh, it's about money, it's bottom line, it's finances. And the next VP, she'll say something like, oh no, it's about employee engagement and organizational culture. And the next one will say, it's corporate social responsibility. And the next person will say, environmental sustainability. Here's the thing, I'm not judging, I don't care. Any of those are fine desired results for an organization. But the problem comes when you have 4 people pulling you in 4 different directions. So all of a sudden they get an infusion of $1 million. They want to invest $1 million to grow the company. Where do they put it? Well, it depends what the desired result is. Because if it's about bottom line, they're going to invest it differently than if it's about environmental sustainability. Both are right, and you both want to put it in the top 10. But internally, if you're torn and you haven't cleared up what the desired result is, that's why you're still on the hamster wheel. Yeah. Because you think that that's the top 10, but you're kind of getting pulled over here. And when you answer that question for yourself, you're able to see, this is where I need to be putting my kind of
like goal setting, basically, you know.
It is, but it's goal setting from a purpose of what's the big picture,
right?
Not just I got to get.
Oh yeah, of course. Not like today. What's my checking off the list today? It's more of like big picture. What kind of lifestyle do I want? Where do I want to be? Because what's my goal? And now that if you write that on a piece of paper and that's what you want, how am I going to get that?
Exactly. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people are missing. That's why they are torn. That's why they feel stuck, because they're doing it because they think they should do it. Or, and when I say doing it, it could be the hamster wheel or getting off the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And so again, with the more clear we can be on what is it I want this lifestyle. I want to be in this shape. I want to have these finances. I want to have this type of relationship. When we can be more clear on that, all of a sudden we go, wait a minute. So this behavior I've been doing, you know, getting into the funky weed stuff with my buddies doesn't really jive with this. So what's more important to me? And then when you kind of clear that up in your head, then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, this is my top 10 behavior and this isn't.
Right. Well, that's really, really great stuff. So this has been a very, very lots of nuggets in this podcast today. I really, really appreciate everything here. So everything from the desired result, I think, was a really great way to bring clarity to just really figuring out like exactly that, like how to get off the hamster wheel and figure out what it is that you are looking for. I love the top 10 pet peeves. I think that is excellent. And I really love the pie chart with market, passion, and aptitude. I think those are both great tools to try to help you figure out, you know, where you want to go, you know, how you want to conduct yourself as far as in your business. Or in anything really, I guess it could be used. Be a specialist. That really is the same tenet that we say all the time, in Online SuperCoach, is try to, go in that direction. So I totally agree with that. And then the top 10, you want to cater to that top 10 and of the majority, the top 10 type people, and let the 80% follow. I think that really makes a lot of sense for any business that you're really working towards. And that's really a major tenet that you promote. I think that makes a lot of sense. And of course, I think everybody would agree with be wealthy, even whether it's in their own way or not. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. So this was just been a treasure trove of just so much information. Been very giving here on this podcast. I really appreciate you being on. If our audience was interested in talking to you more or contacting you, what's the best way that they could do that?
Google my name. My website comes there. Email me, yell, tweet, get a styrofoam cup with a long string and yell into it. Google my name, reach out to me if I can do anything to help in terms of changing the way people think. My new mantra that I've been starting to play with is I want to rewire and inspire. I think people have great intentions, and sometimes they just need to refocus what they're doing, not do more, but just take that energy and refocus it differently, and they're going to get fantastic results. So, and
also furthermore, on top of that, I'll add, if any of this is resonating with you and you would like to read Sunjay's one of Sunjay's books, especially the 10-80-10 principles, I think it's called, right?
Yep.
Where could they find that? Is that located?
Again, everything's on the website. So yeah, just my name's Sunjay, Sunjay, last name Nath, Nath, and my website sunjaynath.com.
Absolutely.
Dennis, and I want to say thank you for having me. Hopefully this was of value, and if I can do anything to help, please let me know.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Awesome.